In a quiet room in Basel, Switzerland, men who control trillions meet in absolute secrecy. No cameras, no press, no public record of what they decide. What if the most important conversations about your money, your job, and your future happen behind doors you'll never see? For over a century, certain groups have operated in the shadows of global power. Not fictional conspiracies, but real organizations with documented influence over banking, intelligence, and foreign policy. Some were created to prevent war, others to win them. A few exist simply because powerful people wanted a place to talk without the world listening. This isn't speculation. These societies left paper trails. Leaked documents, declassified memos, testimonies under oath, and records obtained through Freedom of Information requests. Today, we examine 3 of them. We'll look at what they actually do, how they actually work, and why they matter to your life right now. The story begins in 1930, during the chaos between 2 world wars. The Bank for International Settlements opened in Basel as the world's first global banking institution. It was designed to handle German war reparations, but it became something else entirely. A private club where central bankers could meet monthly, away from politicians and journalists. During World War II, the BIS continued operating even as the Allies fought the Axis. American, British, German, and Italian bankers sat in the same building, managing gold transactions while their countries killed each other. After the war, the institution survived calls for its closure and quietly expanded. Today, 60 central banks are members. They control monetary policy for most of humanity. In 1954, a different kind of meeting began. Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands invited 50 politicians and business leaders to the Bilderberg Hotel. No minutes were recorded. No votes were taken. The goal, according to founding documents, was to prevent another world war by creating informal bonds between European and American elites. The meetings continued every year, always at a different location. Attendees included prime ministers before they took office, CEOs before major mergers, and central bankers before policy shifts. Critics called it a shadow government. Defenders called it a conversation. What matters is this: the people in that room made decisions that affected billions, and they did it without any democratic oversight. Then there's the group that operates in plain sight but remains misunderstood. The Council on Foreign Relations formed in New York in 1921, created by bankers and diplomats who felt betrayed when the U.S. Senate rejected the League of Nations. Its journal, Foreign Affairs, became required reading for anyone shaping U.S. foreign policy. Membership grew to include nearly every Secretary of State, dozens of CIA directors, and hundreds of corporate executives. The CFR doesn't hide. It publishes research. It hosts public events. But its real power lives in private dinners and closed-door task forces where members draft policy proposals that often become law. When you hear about a new trade deal or military intervention, there's a strong chance the blueprint came from a CFR working group months or years earlier. In the 1970s, another network emerged. The Trilateral Commission brought together leaders from North America, Europe, and Japan. Founded by banker David Rockefeller and political scientist Zbigniew Brzezinski, it aimed to coordinate economic policy across democratic capitalist nations. Critics on both left and right attacked it as unelected global governance. Defenders said it was just thoughtful people trying to prevent economic collapse. What connects these organizations is simple: access and discretion. They offer powerful people a space to speak candidly, test ideas, and build consensus before presenting anything to the public. The meetings are off the record. The relationships last decades. The influence is undeniable but nearly impossible to measure precisely. Let's examine the documentation. The BIS annual reports are public but written in technical language that obscures their full scope of activity. What we know for certain: the BIS hosts the Basel Committee on Banking Supervision, which wrote the rules that every major bank must follow. Those rules were created in private meetings. No elected officials voted on them. Yet they govern trillions in capital. Regarding Bilderberg, leaked participant lists confirm attendance by prime ministers, opposition leaders, tech CEOs, and media owners in the same years they made decisions affecting millions. For example, the 2008 meeting included banking executives months before the financial crisis response. The 2016 meeting happened during Brexit debates, with participants from both campaigns present. We don't have transcripts, but we have attendance records that show who talked to whom, when. The Council on Foreign Relations publishes its recommendations openly. A 2019 CFR task force called for increased technology regulation. 18 months later, Congress held hearings using nearly identical language. A 2003 CFR working group outlined a strategy for Iraq reconstruction before the invasion. The ideas moved from private meetings to public policy with remarkable speed. Declassified documents reveal more. A 1975 Senate investigation confirmed that CFR members held regular closed meetings with intelligence officials to discuss covert operations. Freedom of Information requests uncovered State Department memos referencing Bilderberg consensus as a factor in policy decisions. These aren't theories. They're footnotes in government archives. But here's what the documentation doesn't show. We can't prove that attending a meeting caused a specific policy. We can show correlation, timing, and access. We can show that people in these rooms later made decisions that benefited each other. We cannot show a smoking gun memo that says we met in secret and agreed to do X. The influence is structural, not conspiratorial. Defenders of these organizations make reasonable points. They argue that informal diplomacy prevents conflict. They point out that central bankers need to coordinate or the global financial system collapses. They note that the CFR publishes most of its work and anyone can join if they meet professional criteria. Some academics argue these groups are less powerful than critics claim. According to this view, they're just networking events for people who already have power through democratic or market processes. The meetings don't create elite consensus. They reflect it. Others say the criticism itself is dangerous. They worry that focusing on secretive organizations feeds anti-Semitic conspiracy theories or undermines trust in legitimate institutions. These critics distinguish between healthy skepticism and harmful paranoia. The truth lies somewhere in between. These groups aren't all-powerful puppet masters, but neither are they meaningless. They are coordination hubs for global elites, bankers, politicians, and executives who share common interests and worldviews. They don't need to plot in secret. Their alignment is structural. Sociologists call this elite integration. When the same 100 people attend the same conferences, sit on the same corporate boards, and advise the same governments, coordination becomes organic. The meetings don't create power. They maintain it. A former participant once said, "If we didn't meet privately, you'd accuse us of plotting. If we met publicly, you'd accuse us of performing. Either way, the suspicion remains." That quote captures the paradox. Transparency might destroy the trust that makes candid discussion possible, but secrecy erodes legitimacy. The public's growing mistrust isn't baseless. In the post-2008 world, inequality has widened, and decisions made in elite circles often appear disconnected from everyday reality. When crises hit, from financial collapses to pandemics, the same names keep reappearing. The same think tanks, the same commissions, the same consulting firms. Mainstream media often covers these organizations lightly, focusing on protesters outside rather than participants inside. That's partly because access is denied. Reporters who have attended note that the discussions are surprisingly civil, even dull, but the importance lies not in what's said, but in who's saying it and to whom. Imagine being in a room where a future president, a billionaire CEO, and a central bank governor casually exchange ideas over coffee. Even if no deal is made, the connections formed can shift global markets later. That's how influence actually works. Not through orders, but through shared perspectives. After the 2008 crisis, the BIS quietly coordinated the global response. Central bankers from the US, Europe, and Asia held emergency meetings in Basel to prevent collapse. They issued joint liquidity guarantees, decisions that affected every mortgage and paycheck on Earth, announced only after the fact. Critics called it undemocratic. Defenders said it saved civilization. Both might be true, because when global systems hang by a thread, someone has to pull the strings, and those strings are always hidden from public view. During the COVID-19 pandemic, similar dynamics appeared. Private virtual meetings between world leaders, corporate executives, and central bankers shaped the response. While the public debated masks and lockdowns, the financial and logistical architecture of the response was being drawn in private. Political scientists have a term for this: informal governance. Decisions aren't made through formal votes, but through overlapping networks that blur lines between public and private power. This is how modern empires function: quietly, efficiently, invisibly. The question isn't whether these networks exist. They do. The question is whether democracy can coexist with them. How do citizens hold decision-makers accountable when decisions are made off the record, across borders, and without names attached? Technology has made these networks even tighter. Private encrypted forums, closed video summits, and invitation-only policy platforms now replicate the exclusivity of physical meetings. The architecture of secrecy has gone digital. In the past, secrecy required shadows and locked doors. Today, it hides behind algorithms and encryption keys. Global coordination is easier and less visible than ever before. The same principle applies. Power moves faster when no one's watching. Economists call this a feedback loop. The same people who regulate industries also own shares in them. Those who write the rules later profit from them. Those who cause crises often lead their solutions. Not through malice, but through inertia, the system perpetuates itself. We've seen this before. The League of Nations failed because it lacked enforcement. The UN struggles with the same problem. In response, informal groups stepped in to fill the gap. Power abhors a vacuum, and secrecy fills it. Some propose solutions: transparency requirements for elite conferences, public summaries of closed meetings, or independent oversight committees. Others argue that secrecy is essential for effective diplomacy and financial stability. Every reform risks breaking the mechanism that keeps the system running. And that's the irony. The very secrecy designed to prevent chaos might someday cause it. When citizens lose trust in institutions, they turn to alternatives: populism, nationalism, or conspiracy. The walls of secrecy protect the powerful, but they also isolate them. We are entering an age when leaks are inevitable, archives are digitized, and AI can reconstruct private conversations from metadata. The next generation of global coordination might be forced into the open, not by choice but by technology itself. So the question remains: is secrecy the price of stability, or the beginning of collapse? Perhaps both. The system works because most people never notice it. But once you do, you can't unsee the pattern. If you found this story illuminating, share it. Because the more people understand how power truly operates, quietly, systematically, behind the glass walls of Basel, Washington, and Davos, the harder it becomes for that power to hide.